Picture this. You have spent 2 weeks crammed below the deck of a ship, seasick, sleeping on straw, with everything you own in one bag. Then you come up on deck, and there she is, the Statue of Liberty, lifting her torch over the harbor. You made it to America. But you are not there yet. First, you have to pass through a building on a small island, where a stranger will look you over in a matter of seconds and decide whether you can stay or whether you get sent all the way back. This is Ellis Island. Between 1892 and 1954, around 12 million people walked through its doors, chasing a new life. They called it the Island of Hope and the Island of Tears. If you are American, there is a real chance your own family once stood in that hall, terrified, holding their papers. I used AI to bring Ellis Island back exactly as they saw it. Stay with me. For most of the 1800s, America barely counted the people pouring in. Immigrants landed right at the docks of New York and simply walked into the city. As the numbers grew into the millions, the old system at a place called Castle Garden could no longer cope. So the federal government took control and chose a small island in New York Harbor for a brand new immigration station. It sat right in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, which had gone up just a few years before. The message was hard to miss. This little island would become the front door to the United States, and almost everyone would have to pass through it. Ellis Island opened on the first day of 1892. The very first person to step through was a teenage girl from Ireland named Annie Moore, who had crossed the ocean with her 2 younger brothers to meet their parents in New York. She was handed a $10 gold piece to mark the day. Behind her came a flood. In the years that followed, especially between 1900 and the First World War, the island processed thousands upon thousands of people every single day. On its busiest day ever, in 1907, more than 11,000 people were funneled through in a single shift. This was the age of the Great Migration, and Ellis Island stood right in the middle of it. To understand the fear in that hall, you have to know what it took just to get there. Most of these people traveled in steerage, the cheapest space, deep in the belly of the ship. Hundreds of strangers packed together for a week or two in the dark, with bad food and worse air, sharing a few washrooms and sleeping in stacked bunks. Storms threw them around. Disease spread fast. Whole families made the crossing on the strength of a rumor that America had work and land and no one to stop them from rising. They arrived exhausted, filthy, and clutching a single hope, that after all of that, they would not be turned away at the last step. When the ship finally reached New York, something strange happened. The wealthy passengers in first and second class were barely inspected at all. An officer came aboard, glanced at their papers, and waved them straight off into the city. It was assumed that if you could afford a good cabin, you would not be a burden. But everyone down in steerage was loaded onto ferries and taken to Ellis Island for the real examination. As they crossed the harbor, they passed the Statue of Liberty up close. Grown men wept at the sight. And then the ferry docked and the line began. Inside the main building was a vast room called the Registry Room, or the Great Hall. Imagine it, a ceiling soaring overhead, and below it a sea of people from every corner of Europe, speaking dozens of languages at once, herded through metal railings in long, snaking lines. Babies crying, officials shouting, the smell of thousands of tired travelers. Everyone wore a tag or a number pinned to their coat, matching them to the ship's list. For people who had come from tiny villages, who had never seen a building this size or a crowd this large, it was overwhelming and frightening. And they did not yet know that the inspection had already begun before they said a single word. As each person climbed the stairs into the great hall, doctors were watching. This was called the 6-second physical, and it was exactly that quick. As you walked, a doctor studied how you moved. Were you limping? Short of breath? Was there something wrong with your scalp, your skin, your eyes? In a few seconds, he made a judgment. If something worried him, he took a piece of chalk and marked a letter on your coat. An H for a possible heart problem, an L for lameness, an X, chalked on the shoulder, for a suspected trouble of the mind. Those letters could decide everything. A person with a chalk mark was pulled out of the line and held for a longer examination, while the family watched them disappear, praying it was nothing. There was one test that terrified people more than any other: the eye exam. A doctor would take a small metal instrument, or even a button hook, and flip back the person's eyelid to look underneath. He was hunting for a contagious eye disease called trachoma, common in parts of Europe, which could cause blindness. It was one of the most frequent reasons to be sent back. The examination was quick, uncomfortable, and done to child and grandmother alike, right out in the open. People who had never even heard of the disease could fail without warning. For a mother, the worst moment was watching that hook move toward her child's eye, knowing what a mark against them could mean. If you cleared the doctors, you reached the inspector's desk. Here came the questions. Working from the ship's manifest, an inspector, often with an interpreter at his side, ran through a list of about 29 of them. What is your name? Where are you from? Who paid for your ticket? Do you have a job waiting? How much money do you have? Have you ever been in prison? The answers had to match the ship's records. One tricky question was whether you already had work arranged, because a law actually banned contract laborers. Answer it the wrong way, and you could be refused. Most people, tired and nervous and speaking through a stranger, simply told the truth and were waved through in a couple of minutes. Most people made it. Around 98 out of every 100 who came through Ellis Island were admitted, usually within a few hours. But that last 2% is why they also called it the Island of Tears. If the doctors found a serious illness, or the inspectors decided you were likely to end up penniless and dependent, you could be marked for exclusion and sent back across the ocean. And here was the cruelest part. Families did not always fall on the same side of that line. A child might fail the eye exam while the parents passed. A husband might be admitted while his sick wife was held back. People faced an impossible choice at that desk. Go on into America alone, or turn around and take the whole family home. Some goodbyes happened right there in that hall, and were never undone. For the lucky ones, and that was most, the end came at a stairway the workers nicknamed the Stairs of Separation, because it split the crowd toward ferries and trains going in different directions. At the bottom waited a spot people called the Kissing Post, where relatives who had gone ahead stood searching the faces, and families were finally reunited after months or years apart. There is a famous myth that officials at Ellis Island changed people's names, shortening them or Americanizing them on the spot. It is not true. The inspectors worked from lists written down back at the port of departure. Whatever changes happened to a family's name usually came later, by the immigrants' own choice as they tried to fit into a new country. The Great Wave could not last. Many Americans grew afraid of how many people were arriving and from where. And in the 1920s, Congress slammed the door. New laws set strict quotas, sharply limiting how many people could come from each country and favoring some nations over others. Almost overnight, the flood at Ellis Island slowed to a trickle. Most immigrants were now checked at American offices in their home countries before they ever sailed, so the Great Haul fell quiet. The island took on sadder work. It became a place to detain and deport people. And during the Second World War, it held foreign nationals thought to be a risk. In 1954, the government finally closed Ellis Island for good. The last person to leave was a Norwegian sailor. After 62 years, the front door of America was shut. For years after that, the buildings just rotted. Windows broke, the Great Hall filled with dust, and the island where 12 million dreams had passed through was left to fall apart. But you cannot erase a place like that. Something close to 40% of all Americans alive today, well over 100 million people, can trace their family back to someone who came through Ellis Island. Grandparents and great-grandparents who stood terrified in that hall and then walked out into a new life. In time, the main building was restored and turned into a museum, and now the descendants come back to walk the same floor and find their family's name on the passenger lists. If you are American, some of your story may well begin on that little island in the harbor. Thanks for walking through it with me. If this brought Ellis Island back to life for you, hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments which lost place I should rebuild next.